Yo, we have major breaking news in the sport of boxing right now. The fight of the year already candidate before it even started. The mega fight, the fight that was going to really announce boxing's return post COVID. The fight we were all looking forward to. Mega fight showdown between Errol Spence Jr. and Manny Pacquiao has been called off. The fight is officially off. The fight was scheduled to happen 11 days from now, August 21st. And as it's being reported, Errol Spence has suffered a torn retina in his left eye. That's a very serious injury, most likely suffered from sparring. And he's had to withdraw from the fight against Manny Pacquiao. This news is rough. This is rough for anyone who calls themselves a boxing fan, anyone who likes combat sports, high-level sports, competition. This was the best fighting the best. This is exactly what boxing needed. And if I'm being honest with you, this is bad news for the sport of boxing. This was a big money fight, a high-profile fight. You had the up-and-coming and now unified welterweight champion of the world, Errol the Truth Spence Jr., who just has had a meteoric rise to stardom in sports, and obviously, especially in boxing. A knockout artist in his own right. He's fought everyone that they put in front of him, never ducked anybody, building a huge profile for himself. And he had the fight of his career, fight of his life against Manny Pacquiao, legend, 8th Division world champion, and soon to be Hall of Fame boxer. This was going to be the fight of the year. This is bad news for boxing on so many levels. This has been a very rough year for the sport of boxing. I'm just going to call it like it is. We already had fighters pull out because of reasons like COVID from huge fights. Teofimo Lopez was going to fight George Kambosos Jr., and he had to pull out of his fight, which his team was calling a mega fight, because of COVID. And although many do dispute the COVID excuses from different fighters, then earlier this summer, about 3 weeks ago, we were supposed to see Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury, heavyweight mega fight, trilogy fight between the two heavyweight stars. That fight was unable to happen. Tyson Fury pulled out about 3 weeks before the fight because he contracted COVID-19. After that, it was cool. We were like, you know what? We're annoyed. It looks very, very skeptical and sketchy on the part of Team Fury. A lot of red flags. I did a full investigation series on it. Check out the video. And we were putting our hopes in the Pacquiao versus Spence fight. And it's not looking good right now. It was like, Fury versus Wilder 3 is not happening, but at least we have Pacquiao versus Spence to look forward to. There's a lot of hype surrounding this fight. This was supposed to be a transcendent fight. Do we have, Manny Pacquiao, the 8th Division world champion, boxing legend, former pound-for-pound rock star, hero of the Philippines, humble, also just a tremendous fighter, a lot of pop, a lot of knockouts of prominent names. Legendary fighter, 42 years old, coming back to fight. And he didn't look that bad in his last fight at 40 years old against Keith Thurman. And it's like, man, if he can beat Errol Spence, he goes down in history. He's already one of the greatest boxers ever. But, he ups, what we call him even more. And this is crazy. This is breaking news. I'm checking this out as I'm doing this live stream. So I'm just bringing you guys along on the journey with me. But this is crazy. It already had the makings to be a fight of the year candidate. And boxing needed this fight. Not only did we have that, but then we had so much going on in the sport over the past few weeks between Canelo Alvarez not able to secure an opponent in time for his September 18th bout. And so when you look at the sport of boxing, you had Fury Wilder, a mega fight. Fury had to pull out because of COVID. Canelo Alvarez was supposed to fight Caleb Plant for undisputed. This was also a mega fight. Canelo Alvarez and Caleb Plant can't get the contract done in time. A lot of skepticism around the fact that Canelo Alvarez just had some very unrealistic demands in the contract. And so Canelo is not fighting before September, not on the normal dates that basically were reserved for himself. That's second mega fight that did not happen. And then next, we had a fight just recently between South American fighter and Olympian Maestra versus Fox just recently. And that fight all across the board in the sport of boxing, across networks, all kinds of fighters and prominent figures in the sport of boxing are voicing their disapproval over the fact that this dude Fox was clearly robbed in his fight. And come to find out, the judge who had the most egregious scorecard, when Maestra, it looks like he lost every round. The judge, Gloria Martinez Rizzo, she scored it looks to be almost every round for Maestra in this fight, when even the most casual of boxing fans could have told you he lost that fight. Come to find out, she's from the exact same country as him. Come to find out, she is married to an executive in the World Boxing Association, the organization that oversaw and was supposed to hold up the legitimacy of the fight. So, and then on top of that, her Twitter was exposed, and overwhelming evidence that she is a biased and racist person. How can any black athlete feel comfortable fighting in a fight with her judging it, when you go on her Twitter and she's doing things like calling LeBron James a horse, calling Michelle Obama a monkey. She said that the woman who created the Black Lives Matter movement should be killed. This woman, Gloria Martinez, said these things on her Twitter. We have screenshots. I'm going to put out a whole series about that. And so those things already, the fact that we already had 2 mega fights this year that got canceled because of COVID and then contract disputes. And then we had, when a fight does happen, it wasn't a mega fight, but the fact is it was a fight where a fighter was clearly robbed by a judge who had biases before the fight even started. And then now we have the fight that was going to silence all of that. Errol Spence versus Manny Pacquiao. That fight is now off. I guess as a constellation, Pacquiao is going to be fighting Yordenis Ugas, who is a phenomenal Cuban fighter, who is a champion in his own right in a welterweight division. I think he's the WBA. WBA welterweight champion, and we got issues with the WBA as it is. It's a great fight. If Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford were not welterweights, I would be fine with this fight happening, and I would probably pay money to watch Pacquiao fight Ugas. But as it is, the fight is canceled. The fight is off, and man, I feel horrible for all of the fans, including myself, who are looking forward to this, to the fans who bought tickets, booked hotels, purchased flights to get out to Vegas to see the fight that was really, it had the sport of boxing riding on it, and it was the perfect fight to do that. Let's look into the news. So I'm gonna research it with you guys and see what's up. So on Twitter, ESPN ringside reporting Errol Spence has a torn retina in his left eye and has withdrawn from his August 21st welterweight title with Manny Pacquiao. PBC has announced Pacquiao will now fight Yordenis Ugas for the WBA welterweight title. Let's keep it pushing. Dan Raphael reporting Errol Spence is out of the Pacquiao fight. This joint was supposed to happen in 11 days, man. Due to a torn retina. Yordenis Ugas, he was already in shape. He was going to be fighting on the undercard. He's going to be defending his title. Now, Ugas has the WBA welterweight title. He's the super champion. Man, I don't even have the emotional energy to go into the fact that there is even a such thing as the regular champion and the super champion. Things like this is exactly what's wrong with the sport of boxing. Right now, as a fan, I'm tired. I'm physically tired. I just got back from 2 weeks of traveling, and myself and my wife got sick because I got caught in the rain and we were out for a few days. And to get this news right now is just is not okay. But anyway, let's look through this news. Ugas is gonna step in and take his place. Virgil Ortiz, also a really good welterweight fighter, says, "I don't think some of y'all know how serious a torn retina is. Losing a lot of respect for everyone who says he's ducking. Anyone that says Errol Spence is ducking, you clearly have never seen an Errol Spence fight, or like you just don't know Errol Spence even from a distance, because Errol Spence don't duck no smoke, and a torn retina is just nothing to play with. I hope that he can recover fast from this." Errol Spence on his Twitter, he says, "I've come back from worse. I went to I went to 3 different doctors. All of them said the same thing. I'll be back to fight the winner for sure. I was taught to get through it and keep going." I mean, yeah, it's great to see Errol Spence fight the winner. I mean, in order for us to have an undisputed champion in the welterweight division, that's what's going to have to happen. Ugas versus Pacquiao, technically they had unfinished business because Pacquiao had he was the super champion. And then, he had business to take care of in the Philippines as a congressman, and he couldn't fight. So the WBA basically had him as a champion in recess and made Ugas the champion. And so, Ugas earned the right to be called champion, and him versus Pacquiao is appropriate because you can't, y'all both can't have the belt. And so, or I think Pacquiao's a regular champion, but Ugas super champion. The point is, clean this up, man. Boxing needs to get cleaned up. The judging needs to get cleaned up. The fact that we have 4 separate sanctioning bodies needs to get cleaned up. And the sport is going to be rinsed, is going to be cleaned, but is going to come through pain. The sport is going to have to get baptized by fire. It's going to get cleaned up because of the disapproval from fans, with corruption on the part of everybody involved, man. Like, from the fighters themselves, just having unrealistic demands in the contract, the fighters pulling out and saying COVID reasons, and that not being totally legitimate, promoters not wanting to work with other promoters, thus not letting the best fight the best, sanctioning bodies having corrupt judges that are married to executives inside of their organizations. It's going to get cleaned up because fans are going to show their disapproval through their wallets. And that is how organizations and people make adjustments, is it hurts their bottom line. It hurts their bank account. And then they give the people what they want. But I just hate that it has to happen like this, but it does have to happen like this in the sport. But let's keep looking at Twitter here. Spence injured Pacquiao to fight Ugas August 21st. Oh man, this is rough. let me go to Errol Spence's Twitter because he put out a couple statements and I don't know where I put them. Oh goodness, this is a lot, man. This is a lot. Lance Pugmire reports the exact same thing as everybody else. Jamel Herring. Errol Spence, I know you're disappointed about the situation, but your health comes first, brother. Take care of yourself, and I wish you a speedy recovery. Let's keep going. This person said, Jimmy Lennon Jr. had. Oh no, I was talking about the Fox versus Maestro fight. Fox PBC announced it that Errol Spence had to withdraw. Man, speedy recovery to Errol. Errol Spence says, I was taught to get through it and keep going. I've come back from worse. Like I said, 3 different doctors and all of that. Like I said, man, this is not what the sport of boxing needed. This is very stressful. Let's see. From Mike Coppinger, sources, Fabian Maidana. This is the brother of legendary Argentinian fighter Marcos Maidana, who Maidana fought Floyd Mayweather twice in 2014 after he gave Floyd Mayweather all he could handle. Maidana is a fighter's fighter. He's a man's man. He's an awesome dude, very aggressive, showed Floyd no respect. He gave Mayweather all he could handle. His brother Fabian Maidana was scheduled to fight Ugas on the undercard of the Mayweather-Pacquiao fight. So the undercard is one of the fights. It's kind of like boxing's like music, right? So an undercard is like when you go to a concert and you have different openers, right? Like if Beyonce has a concert, an up-and-coming artist might open up that concert for her and warm up the fans. Boxing does the same thing with its undercards. Either lesser known fighters or fights with less notoriety will be on the undercard of the major fight. So Marcos Maidana's brother Fabian Maidana was scheduled to fight Yordenis Ugas on the undercard of the Pacquiao Spence fight. Anyway, Fabian, who was set to fight Yordenis Ugas in the chief support bout to Pacquiao Spence, suffered an injury related to his eye Tuesday and withdrew from the fight. Spence's torn retina in his eye was discovered Monday. This is a crazy sequence. So Fabian Maidana had an injury to his eye, and Errol Spence had an injury to his eye, right? So Pacquiao's opponent had an injury, Yordenis Ugas' opponent had an injury, and so that elevated Ugas to be able to fight Pacquiao. Yo, I want to say congrats to Yordenis Ugas as well. Because he's a really good fighter, and he gets the fight of his life now against Manny Pacquiao. My hope is that Pacquiao can stay focused because he does have to adjust his style. Now he's fighting an orthodox fighter with 11 days notice. This can be a big problem. I hope that Pacquiao can stay focused, and I hope Ugas can also I hope he can, be able to stay focused because you do a training camp and you are so focused on one style. You know what I mean? You study your opponent and your whole game plan is about stopping this one person. And then, out of nowhere, that person is no longer who you're fighting. You spend 2 months training for this person. And then now with 11 days to go, you're told, yo, everything you've planned for and studied and all this stuff, throw it out the window. You got 11 days to prepare for this next opponent. This is rough, man. This is rough for everybody, from the fans to the fighters, to the promoters, to everybody, to the companies that put millions of dollars into the promotion of this fight. It's tough. It's tough. But let's take a look at Yordenis Ugas as an opponent. 26-4 with 12 knockouts. So he's not a knockout artist, but he's a very good boxer. He's 35 years of age. He's 5'9" with a 69-inch reach. He's from Miami, Florida, and he has a decent record. I'm gonna go over that in a second. I'm not gonna lie, it's just hard to warm up to this right now because of the news. So let me get all my information lined up for you guys. Okay, so your Dennis Ugas, like I said, he has a decent record, and just because a fighter has a few losses, they shouldn't be just counted out. Boxing is a fickle sport like that, though. So you see, in a couple years ago, March 2019, he lost to Sean Porter by split decision. That was for the WBC belt. He did beat Omar Figueroa Jr. At the time, Figueroa was undefeated. That was a good fight. He beat him by unanimous decision at the MGM. Then he beat a guy named Mike Dallas. He beat him. He stopped him. And then you have Abel Ramos, who he beat just recently in Los Angeles. And that was last year for the vacant WBA title. And again, that title was vacant because Pacquiao had to, if I'm correct, it's because Pacquiao had to do his thing as a congressman. And now the dude gets the opportunity of a lifetime to fight and beat Manny Pacquiao. So congrats to your Dennis Ugas on winning the lottery and getting this Pacquiao fight, because I know for a fact his payday just went up significantly because he's fighting Manny Pacquiao. So congrats to him. I hope both fighters can get ready in time. It's crazy news, right? Manny Pacquiao, so, 5'5" with the 69-inch reach. So you can see that Ugas has the height advantage and the reach advantage. So Manny Pacquiao, 5'5" with the 67-inch reach. So Ugas has a 2-inch reach advantage over Pacquiao and a 4-inch height advantage over Manny Pacquiao. Now, Pacquiao is used to this. He's used to being the smaller fighter. He's fought plenty of taller fighters, fighters with reach advantages. You look at fighters that he's fought like that are bigger than him. Just off top of the head, Oscar De La Hoya, Antonio Margarito, Brandon Bam Bam Rios. Just a plethora of fighters that are bigger than him. All three of the fighters I mentioned are orthodox, just like you see your Dennis Ugas is. That means they're right-handed. And the funny thing is, I think Pacquiao outboxed Bam Bam Rios, but he beat the brakes. I mean, he beat the brakes off Rios and Margarito, and he obviously stopped De La Hoya. But so I don't see Ugas presenting anything that Manny Pacquiao really hasn't seen before. He comes from that Cuban school of boxing, so he's a phenomenal boxer. But you can see here he's not known for being a knockout artist. He has knocked out less than half of the opponents that he's fought, and he's not known for having like pop like that. I'm sure he has respectable power, but not to the degree that he's like commanding like attention as a knockout artist. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's not marketed as this dude who's stopping all his opponents. He usually outboxes his opponents. And so, he does not present what Errol Spence presents. Errol is a tall southpaw fighter, aka left-handed. And so going against Manny Pacquiao, who hasn't faced, I don't think, a southpaw since David Baby Bull Diaz, and that was a very long time ago. Let me see when the Pacquiao versus Diaz fight was. So Pacquiao fought David Diaz. Goodness gracious. 2008, man. 2008. So that's 13 years ago. He fought Diaz 13 years ago. That was the last time that I think he fought a southpaw. I gotta confirm this. Is Josh Clottey a southpaw? Can't remember. The point is, man, it's been a minute. It's been over 10 years since Manny Pacquiao has fought a southpaw opponent. And Errol Spence was that guy. Errol Spence presented everything that made this a mega fight. Errol Spence, taller than Manny Pacquiao by far, had a significant, I think, 5-inch reach advantage over Manny Pacquiao. I think a 5-inch height and reach advantage over Pacquiao. And so a southpaw versus a southpaw, Errol Spence was going to be able to keep Pacquiao at bay with his jab. Errol Spence is also a boxer puncher. He will get you up out of there if he gets you hurt. Errol Spence can fight from the outside and he can fight on the inside. Former Olympian, so he knows how to box. But you ask a ton of his opponents, he knows how to bang as well. And I think Errol Spence is more versatile than Manny Pacquiao. Errol Spence presents more. You never see Pacquiao just fighting on the inside, but Errol Spence can force the fight on the inside. And you look at fights against him and Sean Porter, fights against him and Kell Brook. Errol Spence knows how to fight on the inside, but then you also look at fights between him and Mikey Garcia, right? And he knows how to fight on the outside as well. And so it's very, 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 very disappointing news. But this is nuts, man. So yeah, let me do a recap. So again, Errol Spence had to pull out of the Pacquiao fight because he has a torn retina in his left eye. I'll pull it up again just so that y'all can see. But this joint, this is horrible news for the sport, man. Let me share my screen. So ESPN reporting, I'm just gonna keep reiterating it, CNN style. Man, I'm sorry, it's affecting me clearly. Errol Spence Jr. has a torn retina in his left eye and has withdrawn from his August 21st welterweight title fight with Manny Pacquiao. This is official news. Everyone is reporting on it. Pacquiao is now going to fight Cuban WBA welterweight champion Yordenis Ugas. Look, I want to focus on the silver lining and the bright side. Like, this actually puts us closer to a fully legitimate, undisputed welterweight champion. And so if we can remain patient, Pacquiao versus Ugas, the winner of that fight is the official WBA welterweight champion. There's 4 belts. Errol Spence has 2 of those belts. Errol Spence has the IBF that he snatched off Kell Brook by stopping him in the 11th round, and the WBC title that he took from Sean Porter when he beat him and knocked him down in the 11th round. Terrence Crawford has the WBO title that he ripped off of Jeff Horn when he came up from 140 pounds. He was the undisputed 140-pound junior welterweight champion. He moved up to welterweight 7 pounds and fought Jeff Horn for the WBO title, which ironically Jeff Horn took from Manny Pacquiao. But the point is, Terrence Crawford beat Jeff Horn, who was the WBO champion, and that's how he got the WBO belt. The last of the 4, and the one that I got to do a full investigation on, is the WBA, World Boxing Association. Manny Pacquiao took that belt from Keith Thurman, and but he had Congress duties, and so Yordenis Ugas was able to fight for that title, and he won. And so, again, like I said, this can be silver lining because Ugas and Pacquiao, they both kind of have a piece of the WBA welterweight title. So the winner of that fight will be the legitimate WBA champion. And now the 4 belts, let's say Pacquiao is to win, which I do believe he will, unless he underestimates Ugas, in which case Ugas can surprise him like we've seen so many times in boxing. When you overlook an opponent, the way Anthony Joshua overlooked Andy Ruiz Jr., and Ruiz Jr. knocked him down, I think, 4 times and then stopped him in the 7th round. You have now, Pacquiao versus Ugas. I hope that Manny does not overlook Ugas, because you can't overlook anybody in boxing. Anybody with the right timing and a right place punch can hurt you. And so you can't overlook an opponent. But let's say Pacquiao wins, which I do believe if he's focused, Pacquiao will win. If Pacquiao beats Ugas, we now have a legitimate person that holds every belt at the welterweight division. Of the 4 belts, look at them like Dragon Balls, or even better, Infinity Stones, right? So you have Errol Spence, who has 2 of the 4. He's unified because he's unified 2 of the 4, but he's not undisputed. You get what I'm saying? Because you still have 2 other fighters with belts. So you can't call yourself the champion. You are a champion because you don't have all 4 belts. Errol Spence has 2. Terrence Crawford has 1. Manny Pacquiao has 1. This has the makings to create kind of a tournament. You get what I'm saying? In the sport of boxing. And so this is dope. And, you know, we wish Errol a speedy recovery. But as of right now, it is what it is. It's upsetting news for me because, you know, like so many people, I was just excited to cover this fight and everything leading up to it. I had some videos that I was going to do and all that good stuff. But here we are, right? We got to literally roll with the punches in this case. But again, you know, reports, Manny Pacquiao is now fighting your Dennis Ugas for that WBA title. Okay, let's take a look. Oops. Hold on one sec. Let me pull y'all up here. You can see that quote from Errol Spence too, but give me a second. Okay. Man, I had so much other stuff that I wanted to cover with the sport of boxing right now, but this is just such huge breaking news right now. Again, we have Errol Spence, who had to pull out of the fight against Manny Pacquiao because of a torn retina. That's a serious injury too. And this is the kind of stuff that I was very much concerned and worried about. I was concerned and worried about this because it's a high profile fight and you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, you know what I mean? But boxing really needed this fight to go down. And my hope is that the best will continue to fight the best and the sport will survive and do fine. But that's the only way it can, is you got to put on, you got to build it, and they will come. You know what I mean? But yeah, this is rough news for the sport. Let's keep it pushing and keep looking here. So PBC, they announced it as well. It's crazy that Fabian Maidana also was injured too. You know, again, if you don't know, that's the brother of Marcos Maidana. He was on the undercard against Ugas. Pacquiao was the main event against Errol Spence. Pacquiao's opponent, Errol, gets injured with an eye injury. Ugas' opponent gets injured with an eye injury, elevating Ugas up, and now Ugas can fight Pacquiao. So word up to Ugas. But the thing I was also worried about was, you know, Errol Spence off this car accident is dangerous, man. It's a dangerous sport, you know, and a torn retina, I got to look and see how simple, like, I don't know that it's simple to just recover from that. From an eye injury in the sport where you have a whole opponent who's looking to injure your eye, you know, like that's, you got a problem on your hands. But let me pull my screen back up for y'all. So one of the few benefits from Pacquiao Ugas, look at this, Keith Idec is reporting this, is the esteemed WBA. Much higher sanctioning fee from Pacquiao Ugas than Ugas Maidana. Pacquiao should tell the WBA to shove its welterweight title, but what would a PBC show be without a WBA belt at stake? So he's throwing some shade at the PBC right here because a lot of PBC fighters fight for the WBA belt. I have a lot of major issues with the WBA, but the WBA is able to get much higher fees for their organization just for, you know, overseeing this fight. But as I've mentioned before, I'm doing a whole investigation on the crookedness and corruption of the WBA. Ugas will step in to replace Spence and will defend his title against Pacquiao, who won that title when he defeated Thurman in his last fight in 2019. Spence discovered that he had a torn retina during a pre-fight medical examination by the Nevada State Athletic Commission on Tuesday. He flew back home to Dallas, Texas on Tuesday and will have surgery to repair the tear on Wednesday. So tomorrow he's going to have surgery to repair it, to repair that eye. Like I said, this is really tough news for the sport of boxing right now. And in order for the sport to thrive, you need big fights to happen. And this was, the fight I was most excited for throughout the whole year. I was more excited for this than I was Canelo versus Plant. I was more excited for this than I was for Wilder and Fury getting it on for the third time. Some fans are saying now Pacquiao has to fight for the belt that he never should have been stripped of in the first place. Yeah, I mean, but he was doing his congressional duties. But like I said, the WBA is also crooked, man. So if you bought tickets for Pacquiao Spence and don't want to attend Pacquiao Ugas, promoter Tom Brown says refunds are available. Contact the place where you purchase tickets for refunds. Yeah. For anybody just now watching, we are in shock and disbelief right now over the news that Pacquiao versus Spence is officially off. I do have some other stuff that I want to cover that might come in a future live stream, but as of right now, that is what we have on the Pacquiao versus Spence fight. So, like I said, I just came on live just now, like with you guys. I'm just discovering all of this with y'all at the exact same time. And I'm doing the research and all of this right now as we're speaking. So, just bear with me. We do have some good fights up and coming this weekend. I think Rigondeaux is fighting this weekend. I gotta double check. I think Benavidez is fighting Usyk this weekend, and also Virgil Ortiz is fighting this weekend too. So I am excited about that. The sport of boxing it needs help, man. I'm not gonna lie to you. I am a huge boxing fan. Eat, sleep, and breathe this sport, but it's struggling right now. It's struggling right now because we had just big fights that just didn't materialize already this summer. Wilder Fury, COVID. Before that, Kambosos and Teofimo, COVID. And then it wasn't a big fight, but it attracted a lot of attention because of the result. Maestra versus Fox, where Gloria Martinez turned in that horrific scorecard where she was clearly biased towards the fighter from whom they're both from the same country in South America. And the corruption in the sport is upsetting fans. And then you had Canelo, who was supposed to, him and Caleb Plant, who were trying to negotiate a fight, and that couldn't go through for whatever reasons. And there, a lot of people say it's because of Canelo's unrealistic demands in his contract, of which I want to talk about, but I can't act like this Pacquiao versus Spence news didn't just happen. And then you got the fight that was supposed to happen 11 days from now, Manny Pacquiao versus Errol Spence Jr. And that fight is now off. And so this is tough. Like I said, we do have some fights to continue to look forward to. Terrence Crawford and Sean Porter are still negotiating for the fight that they have that's been ordered by the WBO. Anthony Joshua versus Usyk is still going down on September 25th. But this is the time when a lot of these young fighters need to step up. They need to step up, and they want to call themselves heroes and the next big thing in a sport, and you want the respect of the sport, you need to step up and fight each other. I'm talking about, Teofimo. I'm talking about Devin Haney. I'm talking about Ryan Garcia. I'm talking about Tank Davis. I know You and your team have your plan for your career and all these things. But if the sport dies, you go down with it. And so, man, I love fighters like Sean Porter, who just chase down the top fights and the top names, and he's always in an entertaining fight. Sean Porter is not a knockout artist, but Sean Porter will always get my money, and fans will always show up for a Sean Porter fight because he never ducks the smoke, and he's always turning in an entertaining fight. And that's what I want to see from more of these younger fighters who, want to be divas. Let me tell you something. I'm talking about Canelo Alvarez too, right? Because no one doubts that Canelo is a great fighter. I've never seen someone use, in the modern era of boxing, use head movement the way Canelo does. Outside of Errol Spence, I haven't seen a body attack like Canelo's in a really long time. Canelo's a great fighter, but he does not always face great opponents, although great opponents have always been available to him. He moved from 160 without cleaning up the division. The platform he was even fighting on was like really trying to get him to fight Triple G for a third time. I didn't really want to see it. I thought that he beat Triple G clearly in the second fight, but he didn't fight Triple G. And then in your same weight division, you have other people with belts, man. Like, you had Jamal Charlo, who's been calling you out for years. Okay, you don't fight Jamal Charlo you give 1.5 million reasons why. You say he doesn't have a name, although he's a champion. But Liam Smith had a name? Come on, man. Rocky Fielding had a name? Come on. Who did he fight recently? Yildirim had a name? None of these dudes had names, but you fought them, right? But you couldn't fight Jamal Charlo, who had a belt in your division. Demetrius Andrade, who not only had a belt in your division, with Charlo, because of promotional issues, you could say Charlo doesn't, he needs to come over here because of the network I'm fighting on, the platform, the zone I'm fighting on. Demetrius Andrade, slick southpaw boxer, also a champion in your division. Come on. He has a belt in your division on the same platform or network that you're on. You didn't fight him. And then, you go up to 175. You fight Kovalev. Nobody asked you for that fight. And, I liked the way he knocked out Kovalev. It was a nice little setup. But Kovalev was past his prime. Kovalev was past his prime his prime ended in 2018, man. After Andre Ward beat him that second time. Later Alvarez beat him. And then Anthony Yarde gave him all he could handle. If you went and fought Kovalev back in 2017, 2018, we would have given you those props. 2016, 2017, but that's not what you did. You fought a Kovalev that was clearly past his prime. Nobody was looking for that fight. Billy Joe Saunders, that was a great fight. But in each of, Canelo's last, few fights, everyone is saying you have unrealistic demands in your contract, man. It's not like it's one fighter who's giving you issues. If these fighters are lying, then come out and talk about it. But it's not even like you're disputing what they're saying. You're just kind of bow down. And it's dude, that's cool. But fans are going to start speaking with their wallets. Because you fought Billy Joe Saunders, who is a big name, and I gave you credit for that victory because you beat the brakes off Billy Joe Saunders. Fans really weren't pulling up for that fight. And so you keep running from the top names. Keep doing that and not giving the fighters that deserve a shot. And fans are going to show their disapproval with their wallets. Ryan Garcia needs to step up against tougher competition, right? Devin Haney has been calling a lot of fighters out. I want to talk about that too. He went pretty much on a tangent. He wearing a shirt with a milk carton with Rolly Romero on it, talking about, has anyone seen Rolly Romero? And then he was on 35th Street. Devin Haney was on 35th Street in Manhattan. Talking about, I'm looking in the trash for Rolly Romero. Has anybody seen him? So that was hilarious. But again, this is huge news. Manny Pacquiao is now fighting Dennis Ugas for the WBA title. Ugas was on the undercard. He's been elevated to fighting the main event against Pacquiao. I'm still going to watch the fight. It'll be a good fight. I just wanted it to be Errol Spence Jr. And so we're going to end this live stream. I got more news and content coming soon, but that's what we got breaking right now. It is what it is. Manny Pacquiao is now fighting Dennis Ugas, and Errol Spence has to recover from his torn retina. I came back from worse, went to 3 different doctors, all said the same thing. These are the words of Errol Spence Jr. I'll be back for the winner for sure. I was taught to get through it and keep going. Yeah. Anyway, that's all we talking about right now. Stay tuned to the channel. Please do like and subscribe, share this video. I'll be back probably later on today or tomorrow with more content, but we just had to break this news. Later.